Greetings and welcome to today's segment of Front Page, where every weekday I summarize and find the most interesting parts of the day's headlines from 5 different newspapers from around the world. My quest is to weed out the facts as they are reported in each newspaper, and I'll do my very best to find the most interesting stories out there. I'm your host, Murat Hamami. Let's get started here at home in Turkey. They've gone with an international story today, and that's the one I've chosen. It's all over the news. Car makers halt output as Canada's COVID-19 truck blockade spread. This is getting worse now. I'm not even joking here. It's getting worse. Well, Ford and Toyota have both halted some production as anti-coronavirus mandate protesters blocked the US-Canada border crossing that have prompted warnings from Washington and Ottawa of economic damage. Many pandemic-weary Western countries will soon mark 2 years of restrictions as copycat protesters spread to Australia, New Zealand and France now that the highly infectious Omicron variant begins to ease in some places. The convoy-style protest by people, mainly by pickup trucks, has been blocking the Ambassador Bridge between Detroit and Windsor, Ontario. Traffic was prevented from entering Canada while the US-bound traffic was still moving. The bridge is vital as it carries 25% of all trade between the two countries, and Canadian authorities express increasing worry about the economic effects. Horn-blasting protests have been causing gridlock in the capital, Ottawa, since late January. And from Monday night, truckers shut inbound Canada traffic at the Ambassador Bridge, a supply route for Detroit's car makers and agricultural products. We put together a little package. Take a look at this.
Following days of protesters blocking a vital U.S.-Canada trade route, the mayor of Windsor, Ontario on Thursday said police were prepared to physically remove them. Mayor Drew Dilkens told CNN that police near the Ambassador Bridge are receiving additional manpower to deal with the demonstrators and their trucks. Canadian truckers opposed to vaccine mandates first occupied the capital of Ottawa, and this week they began blocking the Ambassador Bridge, one of the busiest border crossings in North America. The bridge links Detroit to Windsor and is a major supply route for Detroit's car makers.
Never in my life have I seen this.
With the flow of traffic stunted in both directions, Detroit-based General Motors and Chrysler parent Stellantis said on Thursday they had to cancel or reduce shifts because of parts shortages. And the number of blockades is increasing. Protesters blocked a second crossing in the province of Alberta late on Tuesday and a third crossing between Manitoba and North Dakota on Thursday. The U.S. Department of Homeland Security has warned law enforcement agencies that a convoy of truckers protesting COVID-19 vaccine mandates could affect this weekend's Super Bowl in Los Angeles. That's according to CNN, which reported the agency as saying the convoy could arrive in Washington, D.C. in March.
Back again with me now. Let's take a look at the United Kingdom and let's take a look at The Guardian. What are they talking about? They're talking about Met Police Chief forced out over toxic cultural failings. Cressida Dick has been forced out as head of the Metropolitan Police after London's mayor accused her of failing to deal with a culture of misogyny and racism within Britain's biggest force. Dick's dramatic resignation was announced just hours after she told a radio phone that she would stay in post and had planned to rid the Met of its toxic culture. But when City Hall let her aides know that the plan was inadequate, the commissioner decided to boycott a showdown meeting set for her at 4:30 p.m. and quit instead. Now, joining me now to tell us what this story is about is former UK aide, government UK aide, I should say, Mr. Leon Emirali. Leon, good to see you here on this Friday. I have no idea. When I opened the newspapers this morning and I saw this story about the chief of police or chief commissioner resigning, I went, okay, why is that important? What are these scandals? What is this story about?
Well, good morning, Morad. It's a really interesting story because it came out of the blue a little bit. Cressida Dick is the chief of the Metropolitan Police in London, which is the biggest police force in the United Kingdom by far. They've also got a remit around things like anti-terror. So a huge job. And people thought that actually she was going to stay in role for a little bit longer, but it comes as the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, essentially said he hasn't got any confidence in her leadership anymore. And it really crescendos from a period where the Met Police in particular have come under a great deal of reputational scrutiny. It all kind of started really with the killing of Sarah Everard. There were allegations of police officers using racist, homophobic, sexist terms. And there's this sense that it's a toxic place to work, a toxic place to be right now in the Metropolitan Police. So that's really led to her departure. Worth noting, she was the first female appointed to that role. She was the first LGBT individual appointed to that role. So there was some merit, some symbolism in her job, but it just wasn't working. And I think that the Mayor of London essentially said, look, I think there's someone else better for the job, and I'm going to ask you to leave. So she preempted it and got in there before he could say the words, you're fired.
All right, and when they talk about scandal, I mean, what was scandalous? Just the fact that how the police were treating other people, or that she didn't deal with the police that were being racist, or was that the case? Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's more to do with her leadership of the whole situation. So there were a number of failings. There was a murderer, a killer of young gay men on Grindr, the dating app in London. That went undetected for a long time, and perhaps because of failings from the Met Police. The Sarah Everard case was obviously, she was a young woman killed by a police officer in the Met, and then there was some questions about the handling of protesters who attended a vigil for her. It seemed to be quite heavy-handed and really a bit tone-deaf when we come to think of it. And then there was just the serious failings around the ability to control the workforce. If there are people within the Met Police who are showing racist views or homophobic views, and the public really lose faith in their ability to deliver and protect the people, which is obviously their number one priority. So I think she just presided over a very tumultuous time in policing in the UK, and I don't think she was quite up to the job. That was certainly the assessment of Sadiq Khan, the Mayor of London.
Okay, this is very interesting indeed. All right, Leon, thanks for joining me here on Front Page. It seems like the world is becoming more and more phobic about something or other. Okay, Leon, thanks a lot. Take care. Have a good weekend. Thank you. There you go. That was Leon Emirali in the UK telling us what the UK is talking about. But the UK are also talking about another newspaper. Let's take a look at this other newspaper, the Daily Mirror, or the Mirror it's known as. And they've gone with Queen COVID scare. Of course, we know that the Queen is being closely monitored, apparently, and faces days of COVID tests after it was revealed that she met Prince Charles just 2 days before he tested positive for the coronavirus. Buckingham Palace tonight refused to confirm whether the 95-year-old monarch had tested positive or negative, fueling fears for her health, but palace sources insisted that she was not displaying symptoms of the virus. The Prince of Wales is, of course, 73 years old, and he's self-isolating at home after testing positive after a routine test this morning, forcing him to pull out of a joint engagement in Winchester with his wife Camilla, who's going to be the new Queen consort, by the way. I'm sure you're following the news. Now, aides confirmed the future king was not experiencing strong symptoms, but the Duchess of Cornwall revealed that he was finding situations, quote, a bit tiresome. He is 73 after all. Okay, it is the second time the heir to the throne has contracted the virus, first doing so in March 2020. Right, that is the UK. Let's move on now. Let's take a look at the Wall Street Journal. More catastrophes when it comes to weather conditions, and I'm sure it's all linked to climate change. Wildfire prompts evacuation of California seaside areas. Now, the wildfire is, in fact, terrible, of course. A wind-driven brush fire burning in Laguna Beach prompted mandatory evacuations for residents in the communities of Irvine Cove. and Emerald Bay, along with Crystal Cove, State Beach, and the city water plant also being evacuated. Evacuation orders were lifted Thursday afternoon for the communities of North Laguna Beach, Emerald Bay North, South, and Irvine Cove, according to the Orange County Fire Authority. However, Orange County parks and California state parks remain closed in the fire-affected areas. Now, the Emerald Fire was reported shortly after 4 a.m. on Thursday. So far, it's burnt 150 acres and is 10% contained, according to the fire department. Okay, now this is a terrible story, and as we all know, we need to watch these fires as more and more fires are going to be erupting. Now, we know that there's going to be a lot of emergency services assisting these fires, including 2 helicopters from the Los Angeles County Fire Department and 2 to 4 air tankers from California Fire. Right, that is the Wall Street Journal. Let's move on to the last but not least newspaper, the pink sheets, as I like to call, of the FT. Let's take a look. The U.S., this is news, of course, all over the world. The U.S. Fed faces more pressure to act as inflation soars to 40-year high. Indeed. Okay, so inflation soared over the past year to the highest rate in 4 decades, hammering America's consumers, wiping out pay rises and reinforcing the Federal Reserve's decision to begin raising borrowing rates across the economy. The broad increase in prices reported by the Labor Department on Thursday was led by soaring costs for rents, electricity and food, and could heap more political pressure on President Joe Biden, whose popularity has been declining amid anxiety over the rising cost of living. Consumer prices jumped 7.5% last month in the last year, the steepest year-on-year increase since February 1982. Now, the high inflation is overshadowing a strong economy, which grew 5.7% last year and is rapidly adding new jobs. Shortages of supplies and workers, heavy doses of federal aid, ultra-low interest rates and robust consumer spending combined to send inflation accelerating in the past year. The U.S. Federal Reserve and its chairman, Jerome Powell, have pivoted sharply away from the ultra-low interest rate policies that the Fed pursued since the pandemic devastated the economy back in March 2020. Mr. Powell indicated that the central bank would raise its short-term rates several times this year, while Goldman Sachs predicts 5 rate increases for 2022. Now, he also warned that the highest inflation poses the biggest threat to the U.S. economy, which added an unexpected 467,000 jobs in January. Many small businesses are also raising prices. The National Federation for Independent Business, a trade group, said it found in a monthly survey that 61% of small companies increased their prices in January, the largest proportion since 1974 and up from only 15% before the pandemic. In the past year, sharp increases in the cost of petrol, food, cars and furniture have upended many American budgets. In December, economists in the University of Pennsylvania Wharton Business School estimated that the average household to spend $3,500 more to buy the same amount of goods and services than they did in 2020. It's shocking and terrible, I know. Right, up next is to tell you that wraps up the top headlines of the day. We've gone from the USA, we're here in Turkey, and we've talked about the UK also. Now, be sure to tune in Monday to Friday at 9:30 a.m. GMT, where I'll be here to be giving you the synopsis of the front pages from around the world. I'll see you on Monday. I'm your host, Murad Hamami.